Now, I think many of you will know Kat, and one of the reasons that we've selected Kat as one of our featured guests this evening is because she's had such an interesting career working for regulators, operators, suppliers, etc. And as we're going to hear, she is one of the pioneers in the online gaming industry. And then Freddie Lonnqvist, to us, he's a legend, correct, Kat? So he's a very dear friend of both of us. So he's here just to add a little bit of color to the stories. And I think he could probably add a lot of color if we let him. But Kat, let's start with you. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your background in the gaming industry.
Okay, basically I started...
Can we have some quiet, please? Ladies speaking.
Okay, I started as... I'm a lawyer, and I started as a divorce lawyer. And that's very interesting because I've got tired listening to marital stories, so I shifted to working for a gaming company in the Philippines. It was a very small bingo company when I started. It was a 7-outlet bingo company. And from there, it have grown to like, we now have 130 bingo outlets in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, bingo at that time was just like any parlor games that's played in church, played in schools. And it was our company who basically introduced commercial bingo gaming. And we had it regulated by PAGCOR. And because it's a fairly new industry at the time, and we are the pioneering company of bingo, we have to help the the regulators come up with basically the regulations for bingo. And that's how it all started. Then new legislation came out in the Philippines, and it was a charter that created an economic zone. And it was the first law that was passed by the Philippine Congress, where it took out the big gaming regulation out of PAGCOR's area of regulatory area. So it was a business, a gaming business that's going to be regulated by a new agency called CESA. And CESA is actually in the northern Philippines. There's not so much infrastructure, so we were thinking like, how do we really go into gaming if there's no infrastructure? And at the time, it was a time that there's like so much talk about Antigua being in a case with the US, this WTO case. And so we started reading about it, and we thought that this is like a brand new game in town, online gaming. So we tried to read a lot about it, and we found out that in the other parts of the world, it was then Australia was looking at the legislation or the regulations of the Northern Territories, Queensland. We've been reading through it, and then we've come across this group of consultants that was Karen Caruthers. So we got him into
Karen Caruthers, yes, right? Was one of your very first advisors.
Yes. So he was our first advisor, and basically, he introduced us to like a very simple regulation of online gaming at the time. It was Vanuatu. So we were looking at Vanuatu regulation, and we thought that it was like a very simple one, and we can probably adopt it to the Philippines. So we took it from there. So then we started going to conferences. And the first conference that I've actually joined was speaking before land-based operators like you. And I was a lawyer, I didn't know anything about gaming, and I met Rick Smith. I don't know if you've heard of him. So Rick Smith introduced me to Frank Catania. He brought us over to Montreal, and I don't know if many of you have been to GIGSE. How many of you have been to GIGSE? That was in Montreal. That was a long time ago. It was in 2004.
GIGSE attendees in the old days. Who went to one of the first GIGSEs in Toronto?
It was 204, and there I met Sue Snyder.
Also Sue Snyder, back in the picture.
Sue introduced us to a lot of online gaming people, and so we're from Asia. We didn't know anything about gaming. We first exhibited in a big exhibition, And we didn't know what to expect. So we just bought like a tarpaulin, we folded it, we put it in our luggage. We got to Montreal and it's so crumpled up. So we didn't know what to do. We're looking like beggars beside microgaming, beside Continent 8, beside Alderney. So thankfully, Tom Hall at the time, he was representing Playtech in the Philippines. So he has lent us all of the television sets. So we have to set up television sets in our booth, so it would look so, acceptable.
Look a bit more professional.
So there I met Frank Catania, and Frank Catania was then working with Kanuaki Gaming. And he introduced us to people from Kanuaki. Then he introduced us to Andre Wilsonak of Alderney. And at the time, the focus really was to introduce regulations in the Philippines. We didn't know how to do regulations at the time. We only have PAGCOR, we have the law, and we didn't really know. So we just have to really copy everything. So I become very active with the International Masters of Gaming Law. I was the first gaming lawyer, at least in Southeast Asia, to be a member of that very prestigious and reputable organization. Then I came to be very active with the IAGR. So when I was over at the IAGR, I was meeting a lot of regulators. I met the regulators from Macau, from Singapore, and a host of other regulators from the West. And so it came to our mind that maybe we have to work together with regulators to come up with the right regulatory framework for the Philippines. So we've organized the East Meets West Regulators Summit, and we are very successful with that. We are very happy that AGB was there to help us. We've been able to bring to the Philippines major jurisdictions to talk about, how regulations should be done. So Singapore was very helpful with us. The CRA, I work very closely with the people from CRA. They've been to all of our two conferences that we have. The people from Cambodia. So all of these regulators, we've been very closely working with them, and that's how we came out with the full regulatory framework that we have for online gaming. And I believe that's been really the success of the Philippines as the gateway for Asia for online gaming. And apart from working with the regulator, I was also very happy to be working with Continent 8. I met Continent 8 in 2003, I believe, here in Macau. And Peter Williams is here. I've been working very closely with Michael Tobin. And Michael Tobin has taught us in the Philippines how to come up with the right infrastructure for online gaming. And because of that, I think we've been quite successful in having a very good regulatory framework, a very good infrastructure for online gaming in Asia. And we are very proud to claim that it is our company who has paved the way for online gaming to be, a new industry, at least for Asia.
Well, thank you, Kat, and I think you've just given us the whole story, really, of how online gaming in Asia started. So I think that's worth a round of applause. This is the lady who started online gaming in Asia. I think we're very privileged to have her here. Thank you, Kat. And we've got some fantastic photos here of the first East Meets West Regulators Summit, which was really one of a kind. We had it in Boracay. It was hosted by PAGCOR and First Cagayan at the time. And because it was in a resort, we joked that actually it was regulators in shorts. That's something we do not see every day, is it? So this was all Kat's brainchild. So congratulations to her.
The IAGR president.
So this is the IAGR, the IAGRA president, the International Association of Gaming Regulators. So Kat, you're one of the first people I ever met in the gaming industry, and similarly with Freddie. Now, I may not be remember to be able to remember as far back as 2001, but I think my first gaming event was 2008 in Macau, in fact, the one that we were hosting. And that's where I met both of you. So maybe, Freddie, you can tell us a little bit about your memories of those days, of Kat, and why you two have a little bit of a special relationship as well.
Wow, I didn't think I got to share that, but
Freddie is
on
actually
stage.
my first gaming crush.
Oh,
He looks very.
mine too.
Kat, you're my first gaming crash as well. I'll
He's
tell you
actually
why.
He's actually my.
Okay,
brother.
that's enough, lovebirds. All right.
It's a fun story actually, because I mean, I agree with you. I think Philippines has come a very long way in regulating and taking care of the online gaming space, and it's been a very interesting journey. But when I first met you was in one of those famous shows that we heard about just recently. Was in 2005 or 4 or 2003.
Ah, you were still with Brett.
No, in the Mandarin, 2004. Let's say 2004 in the Mandarin, and I was working for on game, pokerroom.com. I was sent to Asia to figure out what's the landscape for online poker in Asia, and the first person I meet is a cute, very innocent-looking young Kat Nepomuceno, standing behind a banner of First Cagayan, selling online gaming jurisdiction in a beach paradise, where there was a lot of beach girls, I think, also standing behind. And I thought, oh, this is very interesting. And I think later on, your boss, Mr. Ponce, came online and displayed the whole First Cagayan story. And during the QA session, he got the question, so how much does it cost to be a licensee in First Cagayan? And he just laughed and said, well, it depends on who you are. And I was sold. I moved to Asia straight away and set up the new business.
Freddie Ayers put actually microgaming in the map of Asia. I met microgaming way back in 2003. And I felt that I really wanted them to come to the Philippines. But it was quite difficult for most people from Europe or from the West to come over to Asia. And I think Freddie is quite successful. And I think microgaming should give it to Freddie for putting them on the map in Asia. If it's not for Freddie, we wouldn't have heard of microgaming at all.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, I agree. I think something you said about Freddie was that he managed to be Asian whilst being Western, correct?
Yes, he has ceased to be Swedish. He's now very Asian.
Viking Freddie, we call him.
It's Viking Freddie. That's what I like about him. He has told me about his struggles in convincing operators from the European jurisdiction to actually trust the license from Asia. So it was Freddie who has helped us in our company to introduce the Philippines to be part of the online gaming industry. I remember him telling me that in one of his board meetings in the Isle of Man, that he has actually gave their board of directors that book. You remember that book, Freddie? The dragon is on your doorstep. So just so he can very well introduce Asia to the people in the Isle of Man.
So maybe one final question for you then, Kat. You've seen the industry develop over the years. What's your vision for the gaming industry in Asia moving forwards?
I believe that the Asian regulators really have to do like a very good balance of what the operators need. The operators would always going to be thinking of how to generate profits, how to generate revenues. But at the end of the day, the regulator should always have to consider that the industry that they're inviting to be in their jurisdiction has to be sustainable. So there has to have a perfect balance of compliance requirements and how to generate real revenues for the jurisdiction.
Excellent. And I think you're right. You know, looking at compliance frameworks, anti-money laundering legislation is extremely important for the industry going forwards. So I would like you to join me in thanking both Kat and Freddie for their time this evening and for sharing their stories with us. Two very special people, especially to me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind.